And just remember how some people are like, I'm not using the internet. I'm not putting my credit card number on there. This is crazy. And now how we can't live without it. And this is the exact same thing to a much more wide reaching extent that this is what's going to happen with AI. And in every aspect of our life, scary as it might be in some aspects, it's not going away. And so I also tell people, the best thing you can do right now is just learn as much as possible, educate yourself on the different language models, the different tools out there, which I feel like there's 10 new ones every day. Um, and be really thoughtful and strategic about how you approach this.
If AI feels overwhelming, you're not behind. You're just busy running a business. New tools pop up every week and then no one has time to figure out what actually works. At Lion Edge AI, we take AI off your plate so you can focus on running your business. We review your setup, choose the right tools, and run AI systems across sales, customer support, and operations. No noise, no learning curve. Lion Edge AI, your unfair advantage in the AI era.
Christine Janssen has spent the last 6 years building a virtual campus in the Metaverse, complete with a meditation dome, boardrooms, and 360-degree theaters. But as she shared, getting people to actually use this cutting-edge tech has been a constant chasm to cross. Between dealing with VR skeptics and having to self-fund the whole operation, Christine's entrepreneurial journey has been anything but a walk in the virtual park. Yet, with the power of AI now on her side, she's found a way to make immersive learning more accessible than ever before. So, what's the secret to getting people to embrace the future when they're still stuck in the past? Let's find out.
Welcome back, Christine. It's a pleasure to have you back again. You and I had a chance to chat before, and I'm very excited about this episode because we have something very special today. It's not the usual, or let's put it this way, it's the technology that you have in your vision and that you help to make it, well, not just help, led to make it happen. And obviously, I'm talking about the VR is something that not only interesting and unique, but I think there's a lot of expectation for quite some time now, for this to have the breakthrough, right? I'm talking about learning through VR. So I have the pleasure to host today Christine Janssen. She's the leader and CEO of EdStudio. Did I say it right?
You did.
I did. Right. Please tell us about, the power of immersing learning and how you guys go about it.
Wow. Okay, that's a loaded question. So we'll probably have to pick this apart in a few phases. But first of all, thanks. This is going to be a really fun conversation. Always love to talk about merging tech and learning. So the vision for EdStudio, which was officially launched in 2020, was to create is leveraging experiential learning, but through virtual reality. So, as you mentioned, in the metaverse, and a lot of people say, the metaverse is dead, and it's like, oh my gosh, it hasn't even really started. The value of the metaverse is when you're going to be able to connect all these different virtual worlds and spaces together for seamless movement. But that is many years away. That said, there are plenty of great examples of how people are leveraging VR, AR, XR. And in my instance, it's for learning. So what I ended up doing is, well, I was introduced to VR when I was a professor. I used to be a business school professor for 12 years here in New York City, and was introduced to VR before the pandemic, and it blew my mind. And I thought, OMG, this is the future of learning. And that really excited me because there's so many, and just learning in general, that learning experience and the interaction between, a teacher, professor, and a learner, or in the corporate world, an L&D expert or a manager and an employee. it's just gotten so boring and disengaging. That's no new news. And I thought, man, this what VR does is open up this whole new world. So when I first learned about it, I experimented with it a little bit at the university, and then I thought, this has got such massive potential. I want to reach a bigger audience. And so I left higher ed to dive all in head first into this startup. And so that was the beginning of EdStudio. We really, it was more of a B2C play in the beginning. And then we have morphed and evolved and pivoted along the way, largely because of paying attention to what's happening in the marketplace and our target audience. Um, how are people adopting the technology or not? What's happening from an economic standpoint? You could even throw a political standpoint in there. And what are the demands of the workplace and the demands of learners? So, long story short, what I ended up creating was this whole platform VR. It looks like a campus, and I have all these different venues and learning environments. So, for example, yes, I've got a boardroom. I've got an open collaborative space. I even have a rooftop bar, which is great for, networking or doing team events. I have um, lots of solo and social learning, content for supporting that type of learning. And also one of the cool things that we have is it's called the Exploratory. It is a venue that has 6 360-degree theaters in it. So learners can go in and be fully immersed within either a 360 video or computer generated 360 environment. Now I could go on and on about all these different spaces, but I think one of the as we look at people entering the space of VR and immersive learning, it's one thing to have space, but without something to do or content, then it just remains space. So that was one of the biggest hurdles in the very beginning, as people were like, "Okay, great, VR is really that's cool, but what the heck am I going to do here?" So you have companies or universities creating digital twins, which is great, but that was just the first step. There has to be value for learners to go in, and there's something for them to do. And then you can take that one step further and say, okay, great. They're doing something. It's experiential learning. But how about data? How about the ability to capture all sorts of really meaningful, deep data about the learner experience and their progress? And that's key. That's like our whole world is all about data. So at the core, the ability to capture that data using VR and now AI is huge, 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 huge. And that's what will continue to drive this space forward. But I think I I probably gave you more than you bargained for with that answer. Um, but but that's where we are. Well, like I said, it's morphed and evolved over the years. And about a year and a half, 2 years ago, of course, we added AI, and not just to be a me too company, but we all know this is the trend. This is where things are going. This is what people are interested in. And rather than throwing out VR and just going, fully into using AI for learning, the cool thing is what sets us apart is we have integrated both of those. So we have added AI into our VR platform. And so it's kind of a double whammy as far as the learning experience goes, and much more customizable, much more personable. The ability to the data that you can capture, and the assessment of the learning experiences is off the charts. And this is just the beginning. So that is super exciting. And everybody loves to talk about AI right now.
Well, I guess for a reason. But and so let me check. I wonder if you share the same approach or the same observation that I had. So for many years, VR. You know what? I remember the day that I was first introduced to one of the early goggles, right? And I tried it, and I was like, "Wow, what is this?" Because like it took me few minutes after the experience to get back to the real world. After you play with it for 10 minutes or so, like and you get used to this other virtual world, it literally took me a minute or two to now get back to real reality.
Yeah.
And so so the impact and the experience is amazing. And I don't think anyone would argue about that. However, and I'm talking about several good years, right? That since this was introduced. In fact, a funny story, the company that developed the VR for the goggles for Meta was an office next to me. It's a bunch of kids that we never. I'm talking about several years ago, right? And we never understood what they are doing there. We thought it's a game, just developing video games.
Video games, right?
Yeah, and then one day we heard in the news that Meta, or back then it was still Facebook, acquired them for several billion. So I'm like, whoa. But but the idea is that this has been in the market and commercial for several years. However, we are don't seeing the breakthrough yet, right? Uh, at least until I want to say maybe last year, where the big promise of learning through VR, which I don't think that anyone who really tried it would argue about it. Like you can see the impact right away and the potential, but it hasn't happened. And my observation is that yes, exactly like you mentioned, the content was probably missing. But when we say content, it's about consistently fresh content and dynamic content that I can use it in this virtual world, right? And not, let's say, static or things that needs to be, let's say, content that takes time to feed the virtual world,
Mhm.
But now with AI, and you mentioned that you integrate, and I would love to hear more about that. We have the opportunity, if you to plug in brain into the virtual world that you spend a lot, of building, and now you have a brain integrate into it, and the possibilities are, in my mind at least, right, are endless. Not just the possibilities, but uh, uh, the the knowledge that it brings with it, right? Combining with the experience of a virtual reality, now create endless opportunities. Is that, do you share a similar vision, or how do you see that?
Uh, yeah, and like I said before, it's like, I tell people that when it comes to emerging tech, they shouldn't look at things in a silo, and that's like, well, maybe we'll invest in VR. Oh, no, we're gonna push that to the side, because Mark Zuckerberg decided to go all in with AI. There's value, absolutely, with VR, and of course, there's value with AI, but I wouldn't approach emerging tech and adopting emerging tech, again, in these silos. There's major value that comes from integrating both together. How do you use um, the special features and functionality of both? But I also want people to understand that the world of emerging technology isn't just AI. It isn't just VR. It isn't just robotics. It isn't just the Internet of Things. It is the confluence of all of this. And I like people to think, if I could, share a visual with you, I would look at this space and time as the prime time to connect, have that intersecting circle between VR and AI, but understanding that there's all these additional circles around that are other emerging technologies, and they're going to connect as well. I think robotics would probably be the next thing as far for learning purposes, but there has to be like a strategic approach and mindset shift when it comes to how we want to embrace this emerging technology, because the last thing you want to do, I see this happening where organizations are like, we got to get some AI tools, and they're shopping and shopping and shopping and researching and looking around, and what should we get, what should we do, and making the mistake of like, let's just get that, let's get that, let's get that for operations, let's get this, without really thinking through, well, what's the whole strategy, short term, long term, and organization wide to make sure things are integrated. I feel like we learned this 20 years ago when it's like, oh, somebody's using Lotus Notes, and then oh, we got a new, you know, procurement tool, and we'll just slap that in there too. And it was like band-aid fixes and just like cobbled together. And I hope we learned our lesson from that way back then. And it's just not good for an organization for efficiency and sharing, knowledge and data. So I'm kind of going down the rabbit hole here, but I just want to say that this is such a cool time, like when the internet came out and, there was hesitancy and unknown and how is this going to impact our lives? And just remember how some people are like, I'm not using the internet. I'm not putting my credit card number on there. This is crazy. And now how we can't live without it. And this is the exact same thing to a much more wide reaching extent that this is what's going to happen with AI. And in every aspect of our life, scary as it might be in some aspects, it's not going away. And so I also tell people, the best thing you can do right now is just learn as much as possible, educate yourself on the different language models, the different tools out there, which I feel like there's 10 new ones every day. Um, and be really thoughtful and strategic about how you approach this. And because it's changing so fast, I think that worries people as well. It's like, well, if I'm going to invest in this tool and then all of a sudden something better comes out in 12 months, what do I do? So that's why you got to think about how do you set yourself up so you can remain nimble and agile, because this technology, you certainly don't want it to stifle or your ability to grow and evolve. You need to set yourself up so it's in your favor, that you've set it up in a way that the technology will be much more integrative, no matter what it is, if it's robotics or Internet of Things, whatever. I hope that makes sense, but
No, yeah. No, absolutely. And y- I want to deep down a little bit and dive in and take us a little bit about behind the scenes with your company. So, what now that you have integrated AI to some extent, right?
Mhm. Oh
In
yeah.
some services, can you share with us what the experience is like for someone who uses the technology?
That is a loaded question, because everybody is approaching this from different backgrounds, experiences, comfort levels with technology. Um, so, okay, before I get into that, um, let me just tell you one of our biggest challenges over the last 5, 6 years has certainly been related to tech adoption. Individuals, more so than companies. Okay. It's individuals, because it is a change in the way we learn and work and collaborate, all that. And change is hard for people. And so when these new technologies come out, it's like, wow, that's cool. That's cool. That's cool. That's not a good reason for a company to invest in technology, because it's just cool. Okay, that'll fizzle out really quick. So it's like, there's got to be value add to whatever it is you want to integrate at your company. What is it you want your employees to use? So, okay, let's remove the cool factor. There's got to be positive ROI and impact and improved outcomes and all sorts of metrics that you could track. And what's cool is these technologies enable you to capture so many more key metrics and data points than you were able to do before. So now you're really going to be able to prove that ROI. And so that, from that perspective, from the overarching business perspective, there's a lot of benefit there. But before we can even go there, we've got to get people comfortable with these technologies, like baseline. Because nobody likes to be forced to do something new, different. Nobody likes to be forced to change what they're used to doing. It's just like, oh, we got a new procurement system, we got a new ERP, you've got a new this and that. And people, I mean, most employees will roll their eyes and go, oh, I don't have time to learn this. I'm comfortable doing what I've always done. But that doesn't fly anymore. We cannot have that mindset. because the world is changing way too fast. And if you want to just rest on your laurels, that is a sure way for your company and you yourself to be devalued overnight. Like, you've got to remain competitive. It's just where the world is going. And so this issue around tech adoption is really key. We have learned this over the years. And so we spend a lot of time educating people, whether we do webinars or speak at conferences, articles, um, you name it. But and even when we work with clients, that's like the first line of defense is, and something we're very good at, by the way, is getting people to understand why they should change. What's in it for them? What does it afford them to do by using these technologies? And okay, let's talk about AI, where people are so afraid that they're going to lose their job. Yes, some jobs or tasks will be eliminated because of the expediency of using AI as a tool. Some, jobs might be lost, but this is just kind of part of history. It's just like, you look at, from the industrial world and manufacturing jobs, those are gone because they are now automated. But what instead of people going and looking at the negative, what it's also going to do is create new jobs. I don't know about you, but since we flipped the calendar into 2026, I see so many new jobs and new positions created both within universities and organizations. These are new jobs created for AI strategists, AI deployment, being this is not a technical role, but like being the cheerleader to help people adopt this technology. So that's really good to see that. To me, that's the first line, not of defense, but the first line of adoption. So again, these are, I feel like I'm giving you these really long-winded answers, but you and I had talked before about the chasm and crossing the chasm. This is exactly how I see this with these emerging technologies. And I'll just put them all in the same bucket. Any emerging technology, we've got to help people cross that chasm so it can become more mainstream, adopted in the mass market. And that's a little bit of where we are. That is the challenge. And I don't think that the technologies aren't good, aren't useful, aren't valuable. The roadblock is people's mentality and mindset about adopting these technologies and the fear of the unknown. And a lot of people don't know what they don't know. They don't know what they're missing. And that's why it's really key. Man, when I get somebody in a headset and they're like, what? I can do that. This is amazing. So that is key, getting people to try it versus reading something that's like the demise of humanity or
Yeah.
so yeah, we talked about that that chasm, and it's so true. And I'm sure a lot of people listening will know exactly what I'm talking about and crossing that chasm.
No, yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned about, you mentioned adoption and you need to adapt and adopt, right?
Yep.
And especially schools today, because students today, these guys are smart and they are looking for schools to prepare them for the future, and everybody understands that the future is going to look way different than what it is today, right? We all understand it. We just don't know yet how. And so I wonder, are you able to share with us an example of one of your uh, clients that already using the services and how they use it for? Can you give us an example? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. It's funny. We've had a lot of interest from higher ed lately, which kudos to them because they're not the fastest to move. Um, and I get the question of like, who who are the people you're going after, for this tech adoption? And it's not a specific role. What I say is, I need to find the person within the organization who's the champion, who already gets it, who already sees the value in this, to be the person within inside the organization to help be the evangelist. So it's not always like, oh, we enter through the IT department or for the whole university. Is it the computer science department? Is it the dean of a school? It could be all the above. It doesn't matter. I need the evangelist. Okay, that's the way in. So, oh my gosh, I just forgot your question.
No, yeah, I mean, is there only if you can share one of your
Yeah.
clients who already using? Yeah, that they're using your platform, and what? Because it's very, not okay. So we haven't mentioned it, but due to unfortunate reasons, Christine and I cannot open the videos today. So this is podcast is gonna be audio only, and it's already hard to uh to show the audience, all right, what is like to use your platform, right, and get the feeling of the VR. So maybe you can describe to us one of your clients, what is that they do with it, and what's the outcome that they see out
You
of it.
got it, you got it. Okay. Thank you for circling back here.
Sure, sure.
And we'll share some videos as well so people can see this in action. Um, so I'll give you just some examples from higher ed. We have a couple universities using the platform, both VR and AI, for language and culture training, which is really awesome. And with our AI tool, you can select from pretty much every language in the world, and AI just translates it. It's really awesome. So there's a huge benefit helping people to immerse themselves, students immersing themselves in certain environments. You can't afford to ship everybody over to Italy to get that real immersive learning experience, but you can do it with VR and AI and also capture all sorts of data. So that is one area, and that's not the only thing that we do. We're seeing lots of interest from those kinds of departments at a couple universities. The other example I can share with you is we had another university in New York that couple of different departments were on board. It sparked the connection sparked through the computer science department. And then I went to the School of Ed and then to faculty professional development and student tutoring. So lots of different use cases. But one thing that's really cool about this university is they have a program that specifically helps neurodivergent students, and that's a hot topic as well. And making sure when you do adopt these new technologies, it must be inclusive. Okay, so the other thing is we're ADA compliant, and so we very deliberately made sure that the tools and the user interface were adopted in such a way that if you have a visual impairment or an audio impairment, even if you have one hand, if you're colorblind, that we've made all these additions and changes to make sure that we can address all those things. So when people go into VR and are using our tablet and the controllers, there's control features that allow them to adjust things. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because this one university has this program for neurodivergent students, and the students got a research grant and to experiment to see whether or not learning in VR had a greater impact and was more engaging, of course it is, than sitting in a classroom. And they were learning really, difficult concepts, really complex concepts around computer science and math. And so the students went in, they did the training on the EdStudio platform, and then they started creating assets and experimenting with creating content and curriculum. Like, how would you teach, or how would you prefer to learn um, in this type of environment about some really complex topics? So m- m- most I don't know. I'm not an expert with neurodivergent learners, but from what I understand, they prefer to learn visually than just listening and taking notes. And I think a lot of people prefer to learn by doing. That's the beauty of experiential learning. And so when you go into VR and with AI, it's experiential learning on steroids. And so that immersiveness is that you have that full sense of presence. You're moving, you're walking, you're drawing, you're whatever it is, and interacting with people from every corner of the world. And it is so much more engaging. The learning is sticky. And that's huge because it's way better than, just sitting and watching a video or sitting in a class and just listening to somebody taking notes. I'm not a huge fan of a lot of e-learning modules because it's usually pre-recorded videos and then take a quick quiz. Like, how does that Here, you're gonna watch a video on leadership and then answer a few questions. Ding ding, you passed. Here's your badge, and now you're ready to be a leader. That's so bogus. You have to do. It's kind of like entrepreneurship. I used to teach entrepreneurship. You can't just, memorize the bold words in the margin of a textbook and take an exam and you're on your way. You've got to learn by doing, trying, experimenting, making mistakes. And that's another key thing by learning in VR is it's a safe, low risk space for people to experiment, make mistakes in this safe space before you go out in the real world, and it could, have major repercussions, or be damaging or insult somebody or whatever it might be. So there's so many benefits, of learning this way. So anyways, the neurodivergent story is, I love sharing that because every time I do, people's ears prick up because like, yes, it's super important. And if we should learn from these students, um, about the value of these technologies. And what's great is they then went back to their professors and deans and shared their research report and findings. And of course, that's when the decision makers and the senior leaders will listen. They'll listen to the students. And that's another key part of, getting into organizations for tech adoption. Once employees, learners, students, whoever the end users are, once they use these technologies, they become our best advocates. They are the ones that are saying, we need to do more of this. And then they'll listen. And then the decision makers will listen. So that's part of the process for us is, making sure we're getting to the right people and running pilot programs, doing some beta testing, experimenting. And then we no longer have to, you know, try to influence and convince them, the decision makers, that this is valuable. Listen to the users, they'll tell you. So they become our biggest supporters.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is exactly what I think relate to what I mentioned before is that uh the students today, and I don't know if you know the statistics, but on average, I think every day there is a college that's being shut down.
But yes.
Yeah, yeah, and but then the demand is still there. I mean, people still need to get educated and learn profession. However, they they are not looking for same old, process that has been going on for I don't know, maybe hundreds of years, and they want to make sure that the school that they choose has something for them to better prepare them. And AI is not just a trend in this context. It's a way that if you combine it like what you guys are doing with the VR, then they can create better experiences. And by the way, probably even in a lower cost of safe environment where students can practice uh, real scenarios, right, to prepare them better for the future. And schools who won't adopt that, right, would go into the statistics of unfortunate, no longer exist. That's my thought. So, all right, this was awesome. We got to the. I have a new segment of the show. I call it the. Um, I still working on a name, but I call it the Final Five Future Focus question segment. Maybe it's too long of a name. What I do here, I'm gonna ask you five questions, and you know, just shoot from from the hip, whatever you have. It's not
Okay, let me have it. This is like a game show. Okay,
yeah, yeah,
I'm
almost
ready.
like
I'm ready. I'm ready.
all right. Yeah, and let's start with this one. This one is my favorite. Let's start with my favorite. If you had a magic wand, all right, what would be the single or the biggest point of friction or frustration that you would eliminate from the processes that you have to challenge today in your business?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the adoption. I just wish the vast majority of people would take the opportunity and the time to try these technologies, rather than being resistant. Change is hard. So in with our target audience, learning professionals, we have to help them unlearn what they've been doing for decades,
Yep.
try something new, open up their mind, and then relearn and kind of steal that and move on. So it's, yeah, I just wish more people would just be open to it instead of being afraid. That will
Absolutely.
open up the doors, the floodgates, and then, of course, then you get the chasm and the mass adoption.
Exactly. Try before you buy. And then, if you don't see the benefit, if you don't see the value, fine. But if you do, then you might
Yeah.
made a big change in the trajectory of the school or the faculty or whatever it is. You
Yes.
know, all right. All right. Next question. That was great. Next one. I like this one too. So if you look at 12 months from now, all right, we are in January today, 2026. If you look at the end of the year, um, what metrics would you use to measure the success of this year
From my perspective of my business, or
for
the
for your business? Yes.
well, certainly increased tech adoption that leads to more clients, but it's also using the technology in new and different ways that can help you scale this across your organization. So just because you might start using these technologies in learning and development or HR or in a computer science department or something, that's just the entry point. And if people understood this more as well, to make that initial investment, whether it's for devices, software, etc., understanding the scalability of this stuff is like through the roof. So just it is taking clients we already have, help them scale throughout their organizations, but then helping others, new potential clients, start small, build a strategy, and then scale. It's just like for any business, you need to have the ability to scale, and that's where you get the efficiencies. Um, does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you. We move on, move on. Now, the next question, I'm actually going to reverse it a little bit. So the question is about, what is the cost of not fixing something that doesn't work? But I want to reverse it in your case. Rather than ask you about, you know, uh, the cost of what's not working right now in your business, I think a better question in our scenario would be, what is the cost for schools, right, of not adopting, let's say, emerging learning platform like yours, right? And
Yeah,
what's your
this is a great question, and this actually have this in one of my workshops because I need learning leaders to take agency in this change process in this tech adoption, and you get a lot of questions around that set that will be like, well, what if we invest in all this and it doesn't work? What if we invest and it's a flop? People are afraid that they will be, get branded and like that was a failure, that was a flop. So there's that risk factor. So then I flip it around and I say, well, what if you don't
hmm
try? What if you don't adopt and adapt? Those are two of my favorite words. What's the cost of that? And and really getting people's gears in their mind to start turning, going, ooh, yeah, you're right. Because if we keep going down the same road that we have been, for decades, if we're going to look at higher ed, we know what all these problems are. The rising cost of tuition, the student loan debt issue, the fact that students aren't learning things that are the skills that are in demand in the workplace. And that's a blanket statement. But when it comes to you look at where the jobs are going to be, what are the trends for the jobs that are about to be created, higher ed is behind on that big time. So if you want to keep going down that path and business as usual, what's going to happen is some universities are going to get it and they're going to take the risk, they're going to make the investments, and they are going to leave you in the dust. And so, all right, then you can't complain about low enrollment or students, parents, and companies not seeing the value of a college degree anymore. That's on them. So there's so many signals that are like screaming for change and adoption. And at the end of the day, you know, universities, this is how I look at it. They exist to educate these students. And some people may argue with me because there are research institutions as well. But without students, there's no revenue. Okay. Your job is to prepare these students for what's next in their careers. It is no longer, oh, you're going to get a degree in communications, you're going to get a degree in sociology or a degree in accounting, and you're good to go. What's missing is teaching, no matter what your major or focus is, you must learn about technology and you must learn to be adaptable because going forward, you might have a job for like, I don't know, a couple years, and all of a sudden it's going to be changed again. It is going to be disrupted by another technology. So I think one of the best things we can do is to prepare people to be resilient and adaptable and problem solvers and just making decisions on their feet really quickly. And those are kind of, I don't know, those aren't classes that we have, on being resilient. So there's so many things that we have to change what we're teaching, how we're assessing, and this is a tough one to get faculty in higher ed to wrap their head around why they've got to change because they learned in a certain way. They've been doing it for so long. Why do I have to change? And it really is looking at trends and looking forward and how to best prepare those students for what's next. Because if we don't, then the students, then what's the value of going to college? You're not preparing me for the right things. I'll go to a boot camp or I'll go get a job at a company and I'll learn on the job. So it's really detrimental to the health and the survival of the higher ed industry. That might sound dramatic, but when you mentioned way back in the beginning of this conversation about how many schools, how many colleges and universities close every year. It's not pretty. So I find this all super exciting. Sometimes I like the disruption. It's just it forces people to change because otherwise it's too easy to rest on your laurels. And it's like that's not the world we live in. So I I thrive in this space, and I realize that most people just don't like it. So that's what we'll go back to, something that we're really good at Studio is helping people understand how to adopt and adapt new technology, why, what's in it for them. And that's the key part before we can get over this chasm again. I keep talking about that chasm, but
Don't
it's
worry, I'm listening, and I really want to interrupt and just let you know that I'm in 100% agreement with you, and I think that in specifically about your business and your services and where you are at. And my 2 cents would be, we are at the point where there is several factors that are coming together at the same time. We have AI that change things for good and for bad, but it's a big change. We know that. And a lot of things that, by the way, you see it also today with robotics. Things that were existed, but without the brain were not that useful. But now, when you integrate the brain to them, now they're becoming useful. And I see the same thing with VR, for example, and XR, right? For many, many years, this was the big promise, but it never come into fruition, right? That where is it? Why is not like on every class almost, right?
Mhm.
But I think now, so we have AI. Then you have the factor of students and parents, including myself, that are really want to make sure that when we sign up our kids or when my kids go to college next year, that they choose the right decision. And they want to make sure that their school is prepared for what's coming and not just use same old, technique that I used to learn, right? Because they know that these guys are smart, that the kids today, and they know that the world is changing. So they want to see what is it in for me from this school, right? Do they use something different, like immersive learning platform or things of that nature, right?
Yes.
So now when you combine all those things together, and we see that the statistic that schools who don't adapt unfortunately find themselves out, right? So that's why I'm really optimistic, and I really think that we are at the cusp of this big change, and schools, the smart decisions maker at schools, will have to find what we need to do different to not just, get the students, which is what they are, eventually get the funding for, but to make them ready for the next, for what's coming.
Yes.
So yeah, this is all great. Yeah. All right. Let's move on. All right. This is something that I'm sure that you're experienced with. So when you look back and you've been around for quite some time, I'm talking about with your business, and you had to implement new technology, right? Or do some pivoting, or make a pivot with the direction that you take about a specific technology. What works for you to make the change successful? Like, how would you advise others? This is what worked for me. To me.
Well, we have an unfair advantage in that we're a small team and we're a virtual team and fairly young people on the team, and it's just the culture and expectation is that sometimes I'll give people a project to do, and then it's like, "Oh, what? Wait. Now we're gonna do this." And w they all understand that this is the space that we're in and have to be comfortable with turning on a dime, and not a lot of people are like that. This is very typical of a startup. Um, but, um okay, now I forgot the question again.
Oh yeah. So, what worked for you adopting and integrating new technologies?
Okay.
In your yeah.
Yeah, okay, so it's that agility part. It's like, okay, we have to change or we're getting a request from clients that we need to change, staying on top of our competition, trends, etcetera. So I think one of the biggest things is just having a certain mindset that we're just gonna we have to make strategic decisions, but it's also baked into that is knowing that we also have to be prepared and comfortable with some changing. It's very fluid, and we have we partner with a tech company called the Glimpse Group. They are also here in New York, and we've been working with them, and they're constantly introducing new things, new functionality. We give them feedback from the user experience, and we're constantly updating things, but it's always for the better. So it's just it might mean we have to relearn how to use, the tablet or the controllers or some other functionality. But, okay, so we adopt. I think we just all understand that it's always gonna be like that. And I actually have to tell that to clients as well. It's like that's why I said earlier, you can't get too, um, what's the word? You can't get too committed to a certain like, "Oh, we're gonna adopt these 2 new AI tools," and then feel like, "Okay, good,
You're
we're
done.
done for the
Yeah,
next
and you're
5 years."
done. Yeah. No,
No,
it's never like this. Yeah.
yes. So I will just credit, being okay, this is why I'm an entrepreneur, and this is why I like this space, is because of that fast-paced change. But that's the climate and culture that I created, and those are the people that I've put on my team. So we've just absolutely if I went through all the changes and the pivoting and stuff we did over the last 5 years, it's very it's okay. It's okay, and it's kind of that's what you expect with a startup. I don't know, I that's part of the journey, and it's just imagine if we were still doing what my original vision was 6 years ago. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, too much has changed in our world, too much has changed with technology and the demands of learners and clients and stuff, so, even the next 5 years, I can't even imagine what the company will look like then. It won't be what we are today.
Right.
Um, so let's go back to those 2 key words we've been talking about. It's the ability to adopt and adapt, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what I'm hearing from you is if you uh, run the company under the assumption that I'm sorry, that you need to feel comfortable that it's going to be a constant change. It's not one solution fits all problems, or and if you're running under this assumption and awareness, right, that we're going to start something and it might not be the end result when they need to change and change and change, and that's okay, that's normal, and everybody perform under this, awareness, then that's how it also makes it very natural to, to make a change and introducing new technologies and adapt to the new scenarios. I think that's what I'm. Yeah,
Mhm.
uh,
And I'm
sounds good.
walking the
All right.
walk. I'm telling people to do exactly what I'm doing, which is being open-minded and agile. Um, you have to be. And so that would be very hypocritical, right? If I was like, "Hey, everybody, clients, you need to be um, adopting this new mindset and new technologies," and we stayed the same. That
Exactly.
but
You
see,
link.
I find that super exciting. I like that space, and again, I know a lot of people don't. They wanna know exactly what they'll be doing from day to day, and this is their expertise, but we can't do that anymore because then you all of a sudden, you become outdated, you become irrelevant. So it's the name of the game these days is constantly to stay, on your toes, knowing what the trends are, knowing where the opportunities are, and be a visionary, like, what's coming versus where am I right now?
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. All right. Um, since this is a podcast about businesses and AI, this is my last question.
Mhm,
So we talked about, AI can impact business in two fronts. There is that, or two aspects, right? There is the aspect of integrating the AI in our services that we provide to our clients, which you talked a lot about, your platform
mhm,
that in the past 2 years you've been integrating that. But there's also the aspect of the back office, the behind the scenes, the running the business. And I wonder if you consider or already implementing any kind of AI tools and automation to help you with running the business. And now, look, I'm sure that you're using ChatGPT for which you should, right? I yeah, I mean, seriously, I'm telling even my kids, you should use it as long as you know how to use it and make sure that what you're getting back is good quality.
mhm.
But you should. The world is expecting you actually to use that. But I wonder more about automation and maybe tools that duplicate yourself in a way or duplicate other roles. Is that something that you're thinking of or maybe already implementing?
Again, we're a small team, so we don't have all these, like, processes and stuff and operations and all that, which is where there's a lot of opportunity to integrate AI. Um It's and our wheelhouse is really, of course, of the learning and development side. But ways that we have used it is for which a lot of people are doing with aggregating content or putting a structure around a competitive analysis, or I had to create a partnership agreement. And I I got the structure, kind of like the skeleton from AI, but I certainly wouldn't just stop there. I still had it vetted by my attorney, making sure that it was legit. But that sort of thing saves you a ton of time and a lot of money. And so yeah, that's one of the ways to use it. Which again, I think most people see AI. The benefit is content creation and content aggregation, which is great. However, one thing I like to remind people is that, AI doesn't learn for you, and you have to take things at face value and not just take everything that AI generates for you as correct, truth, right, the only right answer. It is something that helps you um, do your tasks much more expediently. And that is the key. This is what I say even to those in higher ed. And using AI for these sorts of things, these more mundane tasks, whether that's, assessments or whatever, that allows you, it frees up your time to do other things that are more meaningful, that are more strategic, that you can have more time with students on a human level. So they're you wanna use AI and some of these tools in a way that's value add, but not become, like, so overly reliant on it. That I think this whole space will just evolve, and there'll be new tools, that are specific to, say, like, operations or procurement or, legal stuff. And why wouldn't you use it? If you can, if it, I could use AI to put together some sort of, um, like again, I'll use the competitive analysis example. Put a chart together for me, if, with these key features. Boom, boom, boom. Why wouldn't I do that versus taking an hour or so out of my own time or somebody else's time in my team to do that? Like, it's a no brainer. But again, I keep saying to people, AI doesn't learn for you. Use it as a tool to help speed things up and have access to this data. But that's where I think there's a distinct difference when people use it.
Agree. Agree. Very good. All right. Christine Janssen, this was a pleasure. I learned a lot, and you are definitely a source of knowledge. And in fact, we haven't talked about it, but you also wrote a book. There is no box. That's the name
Yes.
of it, right? There
Yes.
is a box. I guess our audience can find it on Amazon if they want to learn more about a mindset about learning, right? And what's coming for someone who's been in both side of you've been a teacher yourself or a professor, right? If I'm and you've been on the entrepreneur side and you've seen the industry from the other angle. So I'm sure that whoever find this book will find it very useful and learn from your wisdom.
Thank you. The book was really written to help people cross the chasm.
Yeah.
I'd had enough conversations with potential clients, saying, "Yeah, this stuff is really great, interesting, cool, this and that," but it is the change, uh, component. And so, yeah, I wrote this book specifically for learning leaders, and there is no box, rewiring your mindset about learning. And it refers to this man-made concept of thinking inside and outside of a box. And it drives me crazy when people are so proud of themselves for thinking outside the box. There is no box. It doesn't exist. It is a man-made space, a comfort zone that people play in, and we can't do that anymore. So that's the whole premise of the book. It's like, but there is no box. Imagine what the learning experience could be if you didn't work within those confines, if you didn't constrain yourself and your learners with these outdated rules and stuff. And so that was the precursor to speaking with people and helping them try to adopt and understanding the challenges. And yeah, the book is meant to share all sorts of examples about transformational learning, emerging tech, understanding what happens if we don't make those changes and what's possible if we get rid of that box. So I can share more information with your audience and tell them where to find it. And actually, I'll share a discount code for them to get a signed
Yeah.
copy.
Stay tuned, and I will share it with the audience either in the comments or, well, since we don't have a video, then I'll add it to the comment section.
Perfect.
It was a pleasure. I want to thank you, and I hope I'll host you again next time with some bigger news.
Oh my gosh, never ending.
Never ending.
All right. Thank you so much.
If AI feels overwhelming, you're not behind. You're just busy running a business. New tools pop up every week and no one has time to figure out what actually works. At Lion Edge AI, we take AI off your plate so you can focus on running your business. We review your setup, choose the right tools, and run AI systems across sales, customer support, and operations. No noise, no learning curve. Lion Edge AI, your unfair advantage in the AI era.